Jer si milostivi čovekoljubiv Bog i tebi slavu uznosimo, Otcu i Sinu i Svetome Duhu, sada i u vekove vekova.
In a world of shadows and secrets untold, where primeval stories make the brave go cold, mighty gods on high and realms below, whispers of legends that shape each soul. And nightmarish dreams, cryptids lurking, nothing's as it seems, giants walking, angels and demons fight, only truth can bring the light. Through the echoes of time the tales unfold, mysteries arise as the prophecies are foretold, from valiant knights to buried treasure, this podcast brings nothing but pleasure. Welcome to myth, mysteries and majesty. Study with us and don't be a travesty. Theology, mythology, fantasy and horror, Dungeons and Dragons to Skyrim and Mordor. And Mordor, the powers haunt the evening, where they're screaming. Wizards cast spells in their towers tonight, exploiting enigmas hidden from our sight. Archaeologists make excavations deep of the ancient tombs where pharaohs sleep. In the dust of ages we chronicles keep, storytelling's power of monsters that creep. Myths, mysteries and majesty is the place for you to learn about this haunted space. From scholarship to manuscripts of old, unlock the secrets of wisdom and gold.
Blessed Friday evening. Welcome to our latest episode 212. Sorry for the delay. We had some technical difficulties and challenges, but thankfully that should be hopefully fixed for now. So, namely, we'll be talking about this volume that came out in 1992 that was titled The Montauk Project, Experiments in Time, written by two authors, Preston Nichols and Peter Moon. And then, like I said, this book was published in 1999, and it's a first book in series that is depicting time traveling experiments at this Montauk Air Force Base at the eastern tip of Long Island. And this was considered to be the progenitor of the Montauk Project conspiracy theory. And this theory is actually something that propelled and inspired the whole universe of Stranger Things. Currently, the world number one TV show, and probably TV show number one TV show ever. That's my biased subjective opinion. So this book, like I said, came out in 1992. Some photos that were included when it comes to the very base and crude drawings of the project electronics in the book contribute to the authentic feel. Using a time travel theme, the characters alter history with visits to Jesus Christ, as well as altering the outcome of the American Civil War and World War II battles. Jesus Christ is not in this first novel that we found, so that's probably coming later. The authors claim that the book is based on their theory of repressed childhood memories of being abducted and experimented on against their will. In the book, they also throw doubt on other claims, saying whether you read this as science fiction novel, science fiction novel or non-scientific theory, be prepared because you're gonna expect to find an amazing story and enjoy the ride. So it's a lot of conspiracies. When I say it's conspiracy, I don't necessarily mean to insult anyone. Where the core probably of truth is there, but over time and due to the lack of data and also mixed with assumptions, a lot of later things were probably attributed and added and exaggerated, either because of assumptions or trying to connect the dots, or trying to present the story as something very cool and interesting, and why not selling the book and making money. Shaun, when it comes to this whole project, when it comes to this whole conspiracy, I know that you heard about it way before me. What is your overall opinion? What is your overall stand on it?
So for me, Project Montauk is it is a story about the abuse of the American government upon its own people. Um, I personally don't place a lot of stock in it, um, but every all of the elements of it we know have happened in other various government projects. So there's nothing in it uh, that is necessarily too strange or too far out, except for maybe the time travel and trying to assassinate Jesus. That might be a little bit too far out. But as far as the elements of child abuse, brainwashing, um, having false memories, using amnesia, creating Manchurian candidates, using psychic control, attempting to project different thoughts onto groups of people. Like that's all been well documented as far as government projects are concerned. They've been trying to do all of that. So none of that is new here. Um, the places that I think that I run afoul of this is just I don't believe any of the contributors to the story. They all have very compromised accounts, and for me, it's they just had ulterior motives, and the fact that they're not giving a unbiased retelling, but all of the people who are disseminating this information happen to be key figures in the story. Um, that's a little far fetched for me, but it makes a great story.
Yeah, for sure. And I just want to say that easily one third of the book has to deal with this co-author who was, I don't know if he's still alive, an engineer, and who actually speaks from his, well, he spent one third of the book speaking from his own personal experience being involved in this experiment, and even for a season forgetting about this. So yeah, we'll deal with that. So let's start from the very get-go, from the very beginning, and talking about this interesting book. And I had provided a link for people interested to go and buy it for themselves. So yeah, a circle of insiders believe that this Montauk project was a development and culmination of the phenomena that was previously happening with the USS Eldridge naval ship in 1943. And this was popularly known as the Philadelphia experiment, where the ship actually disappeared while the Navy conducted radar invisibility experiments. And I think when I was way younger and growing up, there was a movie actually being made according to this project. I don't remember much about the movie, but yes, it was about this USS Eldridge boat, actually a Navy ship. So experiments were conducted that included electronic mind surveillance and the control of distinct populations. The climax of this work was reached as at Montauk Point in 1983. So exactly 40 years later, and this is important because later they'll explain about these wormholes and tunnels and how you can actually travel to time. And these sequences of 20 years is important. So again, phenomena with the USS Eldridge naval ship and Philadelphia experiment happened in 1943. And when this climax of the work was reached at Montauk Point, and this whole experiment, this was 40 years later, exactly in 1983. So it was at that point that the Montauk Project effectively ripped open a hole in space-time to 1943, as the book authors believe to be the case. And then they're introducing the book by saying that probably the best person to explain this is the co-author, this engineer Preston Nichols, who was involved in this project. Then they're talking about the difference between soft facts and hard facts. So they say that some of the data you'll read in this book can be considered as soft facts, and that means they're not untrue. They're just not backed up by irrefutable documentation. But a hard fact would be documentation or hard physical evidence that could stand up to scrutiny. And throughout the book, you'll see occasionally uh, scanned documents, supposedly as evidence of a certain government official signing the papers, these secret projects and whatnot. So it's up to the viewer and up to the reader to decide what is true, what is not. Because honestly, I don't. After reading the book, I cannot tell what was true, what was not. If were there some experiments and some shady happenings? I mean, this happens in every country. I wouldn't be doubtful, but with all the elements that came out to the story, especially with the face of Mars and the pyramids and Nikola Tesla being involved and everything that came up with, including some beast or monster later. I mean, yeah, I can see why this inspired the production of the Stranger Things, because Stranger Things is a phenomenal masterpiece. So yeah, I can see why this inspired the whole TV show. Um, yeah, the authors are promising that if you would do honest investigation, the Montauk Project did exist. And then they say one can also find people who have been experimented on in some fashion or another. But again, this book was written in 1992. How many people died were involved in this project? Only God knows, because after all, it was an old project. So they promise that this book, is being presented as nonfiction, and it contains no falsehoods to the best knowledge of both of the authors. So let's start dissecting the whole narrative. So first, we have to go in the past and see what was happening in 1943 with the Philadelphia experiment. Shaun, are you familiar with anything? So I don't have to give the whole story. Are you familiar, or do you want me to continue talking, or you want to summarize?
Okay, so I can summarize real quick. The Philadelphia experiment was an attempt to have radar cloaking because the German subs were targeting our battleships and our merchant vessels. And the way that they would do that with their mines is by the magnetic field that would build up over the ships as they're traveling through the water. And so that's how they would use their missiles to target the ships. And so they were looking for a way to make them basically invisible to the German radar. And so the story goes that they put Tesla coils and Ford generators on the ship, and that when they powered it all up, the ship then disappeared from where it was in Philadelphia, and then it appeared in Newport 10 minutes before it disappeared in Philadelphia, and then it reappeared 20 minutes later back in Philadelphia. Um, and that this was all done with the help of Nikola Tesla, and he's the one that set up the coil. The problem is Tesla died almost a year before the experiment, so he wasn't alive. The government wasn't seeking him out. He died alone and penniless, unfortunately, even though he was a great inventor and had a great mind. The USS Eldridge throughout entire 1943 was never docked in Philadelphia. It was in New York. So that it's just not possible that happened. But in 1943, something was happening in Philadelphia. The government was looking into how they could make their ships invisible to German radar. This was all actually happening. And what they found was if you were to take a cable and drop it off the back of the ship and have 2,000 amps running through the cable, what it would do is it would distort the image of the ship on radar. You wouldn't be able to pick it up. And so it would the Germans wouldn't be able to target our ships. After long enough in the water, though, as you're traveling throughout the face of the earth, you would pick up that magnetic field. So they had to go through a process called degassing in order to remove that electromagnetic field from the ships. But this was something that was being studied and attempted in 1943 in Philadelphia. But the rest of it seems like it was all made up, and it comes from a guy who probably isn't very trustworthy. He ended up sending letters to a guy by the name of MK. Is it Jusset? And this guy was he was actually a scientist that was working on how the U.S. should think about the propulsion systems of the UFOs and whether or not to take them seriously or not. And he was one of the ones who kind of disagreed with Einstein as far as a theory of relativity and believed that, yeah, actually their jet propulsion could work, and it could just be that, unified field theory is wrong. And then it's interesting that at that time Einstein retracted unified field theory. So it seems like, hey, this guy might be onto something. The naval what is it? The Office of Naval Research contacted Jussit because this guy is sending messages to him about the Project Philadelphia, and he's like, I don't know nothing about it. So the naval guys are now going after this guy. They can't find him, and so it ends up that, okay, nobody knows where this is, but this guy supposedly knows something, but officially none of this stuff happened, and that's where Justin wanted to leave it. But then he starts going back over the evidence and looking at the things, and the way his brain worked was he was trying to dissect, well, if this did happen, how would it have happened? And he started writing material about how this could happen. Not that it did, but how it could happen, and then what would have to be in place for it to happen. He ended up giving this material to a friend and said, hold on to this if anything happens to me. He ended up denying a contract to come out and help the Navy do research on another program. And the next day he was supposed to meet with his friend and said that he had something really big to talk about, a really big development. And that night he died. So that kind of leaves us with, I'm very unsatisfied with that conclusion, because the guy who should have been like, no, there's no way that this could ever happen, ended up kind of being on the side of the crazy guy who was like, actually, this probably could happen, and here's how. And then the Navy's like, oh, no, you don't. So, as far as the Philadelphia project, we don't have any evidence that it actually happened. The USS Eldridge was not in that area. We know that in Philadelphia they were studying the thing that they said that they were supposed to be studying. No ships ever disappeared. None of that ever happened. But then our guy was like, actually, this could happen, and here's how it would happen. So as far as the Philadelphia project, it's not an actual thing that did happen. But could it happen? We don't know.
Man, for us who are sci-fi enthusiasts, now we're disappointed. You told us that actually the Navy ship did not disappear. I was reading about supposedly how the crew felt disoriented. They had to be discharged from the military. They were not like able to work or even think normally. Poor people, feel bad for them. But if it's not true, like, you just fell for a lie. By the way, when you said that the guy who was supposed to expose all of this and meet with a friend and disappeared, reminds me of so many similar stories in the past. Like, one of the newest ones, at least to me, that comes to my mind is, do you remember a couple of years ago where that guy, I don't know his name, but he was an American, where he supposedly saw a giant on the top of a mountain from a car, and he was recording. Now, I don't know if that video was true. I don't know. Even if it's true, if that was a giant. But supposedly he had recorded that and posted on his YouTube channel, and he witnessed like cars with like dark windows being just surrounding his house. He felt scared. He didn't want to post about this. And when I don't know what his next move was to do, they found him dead. And he was like a middle-aged guy. He wasn't obese. He wasn't like a drug addict. Like, how can you just simply die out of blue? So I'm like, everyone knows who'll be watching this podcast that I'm not crazy in conspiracies, but this is just mere logic. Like, if I would post a video or photo of shadowy entities that sometimes we talk about, or giants, or a cryptid, or anything of that sort, and if I disappear, and I have no history of drug or alcohol abuse, I was not in a cult, I wasn't that depressed to hurt myself, that much depressed, I didn't have any pill issues, abuse, why would I die so suddenly? I never got VAXX a few years ago. I'm healthy. I have no reason to die. My heart is fine. My brain is fine. My internal organs are fine. I did a checkup in the summertime. So why would they disappear? Why would this guy disappear? So again, I'm not into conspiracy, but it's just like you can't not ask those questions. Like, why would a guy who supposedly saw someone record it and posted it online? I remember that he wanted to go to that mountain again, and there would be like military forces forbidding him to go there. I understand if you're protecting something and you're just doing your job as a soldier, you have to send any visitor back. But like, why would he disappear for something like that? It's scary. It's. I don't know if you have any comment on that, or if you want us to continue. Okay, you can talk.
Yeah, yeah, no, you're absolutely right. There seems to be certain things that you're allowed to, as you said, somebody just post online, and you see all kinds of crazy stuff online. But there seems to be this certain theme that maybe we're not tracking on, where they're like, "Oh, that actually might be real. We got to take that guy out." So I'm not sure how they determine that, but apparently they do have a criteria for determining it.
Man, I hope they're not throwing dice because any of us can disappear. Okay, so back to the Montauk, because Shaun explained to us what was happening or not happening when it comes to Philadelphia experiment in the Navy ship. So yeah, when it comes to this Montauk Project, the book authors are saying that they discovered a wave that could be termed as a telepathic wave. And they said that in 1974, they noticed this phenomena that was common to all of the psychics that they work with. Every day at the same hour, their minds would be jammed. They couldn't think effectively. Suspecting that the interference was caused by an electronic signal, this engineer, who was the co-author, used his radio equipment and correlated what came on over the airwaves at the time when the psychics were non-functional. So whenever a 410 or 420 megahertz cycle appeared on the air, they were jammed. So these psychics were like, just couldn't operate when this radio wave appeared with that frequency. So they decided to trace the signal, placing a modified TV antenna on the roof of their car. They grabbed a VHF. I mean, this is all technology. So if you are a little bit older, like Shaun and me, and laughing, yeah, but this is back in those days. So they grabbed this receiver and set it out, looking for the source of this signal. So they tracked it to the Montauk Point, and it was coming directly from a red and white radar antenna on the Air Force base. So they continued their psychic research, but didn't get anywhere on the investigation on this Montauk antenna until 1984. Very interesting year because of the novel 1984 and everything that we were told in that novel, but that's another story. And then a friend of theirs called, at least a friend of this engineer, he told the engineer that the place was now abandoned and that the engineer should not go, that he should go now because it supposedly should be safe to go and investigate it. So this engineer, the book author, he went there. The first thing that caught his eye was this high voltage equipment. So the engineer was very interested, as it was a radio engineer's delight, and he was a guy who was into radio technology. He was collecting these devices, buying them. It was his passion, his hobby. So he wanted to buy all this equipment. So this guy that he named John Smith. There are a lot of fake names in the book, but this is because the authors admit they're doing this for supposed protection, which I understand, but it also sucks if you want to verify information. It's very hard to verify them. So they met this John Smith, and he didn't want to discuss anything on the phone. He said that no one officially admitted to owning that equipment. As far as they were concerned, that equipment was abandoned, and this engineer was supposedly free to go and take whatever he wanted. So he gave to the engineer a piece of paper which appeared to be official and said to show it to anyone who might question engineer's presence in the whole area. It was not an official document, nor it was registered with anybody, but he assured the engineer that it would keep the police off his back. He also referred him to the caretaker of the Montauk Air Force Base, who would show him the place around. So this engineer now okay, I have paper, I feel confident, I have a clue, I'm going to go and visit this military base. So within a week, he went there, he met his caretaker, which he called Mr. Anderson. My mind immediately goes to the Matrix movies. So he said that he was welcome to take anything he could when it came to this trip. And if he ever saw him out there again, he would have to kick him out. So he was welcome for the first time, but supposedly he wasn't welcome to come back ever again. So this engineer went with a fellow to this trip, whom he called Brian, and Brian was a psychic. He went into a building and saw a man, the engineer, not a psychic, who appeared to be homeless. And this is where things are getting strange. Homeless guy told the engineer that he had been living in the building ever since the base was abandoned. He also said that there had been a big experiment a year earlier and that everything had gone crazy. In fact, this homeless guy recognized the engineer, and the engineer was like, "This is the first time I have ever seen you. What are you talking about?" It's like, "Tell me the story." So I guess he was open to listen. So the homeless guy told him the story. He said that he had been a technician at the base. He had deserted the project just before the base had been abandoned. So he spoke about a big beast appearing and frightening everyone away. He told the engineer a lot about the technical details of the machinery and how things actually worked. He said something that was very strange, that he remembered this engineer. In fact, engineer had been his boss on the whole project. I'm like, and the engineer's like, "That's nonsense. I never met you before. Like, this is too strange for me." So he left this homeless guy, and he was like, "Man, what a weird dialogue I had with this guy." Like, So he went back to the psychic guy, to Brian, who went on the other side of this base to psychically, if I can put it that way, investigate and read the whole area if there was something happening that would be invisible to the eye, but visible to your spiritual eye, to put it in simple terms. And this guy, psychic, he says, yeah, there are some funny vibrations in the area. So he said that the reading of the area was strangely similar to what the homeless man had just told the engineer. He spoke of irregular weather patterns, mind control, and a vicious beast. So this psychic supposedly was able to read the area and see in his mind all of these things happening. He even mentioned animals being affected, crashing through windows, just acting completely insane. I'm just thinking about zombies, and in this case, zombified animals. So the engineer was able to acquire much of the equipment before he left the Montauk Project base. A few weeks later, he was surprised by a visitor who just entered his lab and came straight to him and didn't even ring the bell or anything. So the engineer was, of course, naturally scared, because who is this stranger comes to my office, to my lab? Does he want to hurt me? What is he doing here? But this guy who opened the door and broke in his lab said that, just like the homeless guy, he also knew this guy, and just like to the homeless guy, the engineer was his project boss at the Montauk base. And this guy's like, wow, this is like second weird thing. What are the odds that two different guys will tell me the same thing? How can I be your boss? I never met you in my life. He couldn't recognize any of them. So the engineer had to start investigating more and more. So he went out and camped on the beach for a week or so. He went to bars and local areas. And he would just ask people what were they witnessing when all of this project was abandoned. So 6 different people said that it had snowed in the middle of August. There were listings of hurricane force winds that came out of nowhere. Thunderstorms, lightning, and hail were also reported under unusual circumstances. They would appear when previously there had been no meteorological evidence to expect such a weather. So there have been other unusual stories besides this weather pattern. For example, the animals that we just mentioned, tons of them, packs of them would show up in town, almost like organized, and just randomly crash through the windows of buildings and stores. And it was such a, of course, unusual behavior, because animals usually don't do that unless they have unless they become wild or something. So the engineer got the idea to speak to the chief of police, who also informed the engineer of strange happenings. For example, crimes would be committed in a 2-hour period. Then all of a sudden, nothing, zero crime. So we have to remember that Montauk is a very small town. After the quiet, another 2-hour period of crimes would occur. teenagers were also reported to suddenly group in masses for 2 hours, then mysteriously separate and go their own ways. I'll stop here before we continue because I don't want to talk for too much. Shaun, so here we see this. We see the engineer attending the base for the first time. He's bringing his friend or acquaintance, Brian the psychic. He gets homeless guy who tells him, "I know him," and the guy breaks in his lab and says, "I also know you. You were my boss." And this guy is like confused what is happening. And when he decides to investigate the area, he's hearing from the locals and supposedly even from the sheriff about strange happenings with crime, with teenagers, with animals, with hurricanes, with all of this. It's like it's action packed. This would be a wonderful movie or even a TV show besides Stranger Things. So what are your thoughts about when it comes to this? For me, that was a phenomenal beginning. It's almost like you can envision a movie or you're like in this story.
I think this engineer is a very trusting person, because if you were to show up to somebody who's homeless, like, what are you doing here? Well, I live here. Okay, why are you here? I work here. What? You're my boss. What? You work here too. What? Like, are you kidding me? That's stupid. But okay. Like, to me, that doesn't make any sense. Like, you're not going to listen to a homeless person. This guy doesn't have his life together. Why are you going to take what he says seriously? That's way too trusting. Um, Now, as far as going out and talking to everybody about, like, oh, is there anything strange happening? Bruh, you live there. Like, you don't remember anything strange happening? Like, could you consult yourself first? Oh, it snowed in August. Do you remember that? "Well, I don't remember anything." Okay, cool. You know who does? The meteorologists. Maybe you could consult them. Oh, there was hurricane force winds. Really? Because we record that stuff. So I don't know. I think that stuff's kind of crazy. Now, as far as controlling weather and how that relates to, the psychic experiments and everything like that, that is something that's well known that we tried to do. Wilhelm Reich was a scientist. He studied under Sigmund Freud, and Sigmund Freud told him it'd probably be a good idea not to sleep with your clients. And Wilhelm Reich was like, "Nah, I'm cool. I'm gonna do it." And so he ended up marrying one of his clients, and then left her for a girlfriend that was another client that he had. And he moved to from Austria to Sweden. They kicked him out of Sweden for pimping out his girlfriend in the hotel, doing his therapy. This is the guy who created orgone.
I'm in the wrong business. Okay, continue.
This is the guy who created, like, the orgone energy. Basically, he took Freud's whole idea, and Freud was a sex obsessed crazy guy. But Wilhelm Reich was all that and a bag of chips. So he was sex obsessed, and he thought that the essence, or, like, the force of the universe. So Yoda's force is orgasm energy, and that at the moment of sexual climax, we're just vessels for the energy of the universe. And so he created these orgone accumulators that are made out of some sort of organic matter in order to be able to bounce back energy on you, so you can have a better time, I guess. And then it so it goes from this, the idea that, basically all of your problems are sex, which to me is just crazy, to the control of the whole universe is this orgone thing. And so he says, well, you can manipulate weather patterns by achieving climax during a thunderstorm. I guess you got nothing better to do because it's raining outside, right? um and so, yeah, like that was his, and they tested that the theory, because he came to the United States. The United States was like, yeah, weather manipulation. We're totally into that. And they saw right
Yeah,
through
yeah,
him. And
just give us something so we can manipulate people.
yeah, eventually that's where they wanted to go with it. But like that's the basis for all of this understanding, is that it's all orgone energy. So it's based on Wilhelm Reich's findings. He didn't find anything. I mean, he must have found himself at a very young age, but he didn't find anything. Um, but yeah, the United States saw right through him and said, "Dude, you're crazy. Like you're just as sex
I think
obsessed
if
with."
you're crazy for America, then you're crazy for everyone. Because
Yes, exactly. If it,
almost everything can go through. So if you're crazy for people here, then no one should be able to accept your projects. And by the way, there's a whole chapter in this book dedicated to this guy and his invention.
yeah. The FDA ended up seizing all of his inventions because what they said was you can't be sending out orgone accumulators because there's no clinical test that it does anything and you're selling them. And he's like, yeah, okay, this is America. I can do what I want. No, you can't. Not when you're selling it as a pharmaceutical product. So yeah, they took all of his stuff and arrested him for that. Which was a totally based move by America because this guy is a creep. He's a weirdo. Um, but that gets into later. What we'll find is when they're talking about deprogramming, that's part of deprogramming. It's sexual stimulation during the deprogramming procedure, where the guy who's leading you through deprogramming is handling you. Uh, that yeah. So when you start hearing these people talking about, oh yeah, we can deprogram you, they're talking about lathering up and or handling you. That's not okay. Again, like I said, the story isn't what I have a problem with. It's the people. It's a bunch of weirdos. But we'll continue. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for the digression. But I wanted to get into the whole weather stuff in Wilhelm Reich because a lot of the theories in here are based on Wilhelm Reich. And like you said, there's an entire chapter dedicated to him.
Yeah, I mean, I wish that was the only weird thing in the book. We'll see some misinformation about Tesla, then those pyramids on Mars. A whole story is like, okay, something mysteriously happened in Philadelphia experiment, and then later, 40 years later, Montauk Project. And I think I know something, but let me add all of this misinformations or half accurate information. I cannot blame him so much for not checking some of the text we don't have into 1992. But dude, we had libraries, you had places where you can just go and rewind on those little devices and see the old newspaper articles and clips. You can go and reaffirm before publishing a book. You owe to your readers to check the accuracy of the information. So I'm thinking, well, then this was a deliberate move that you want to place exaggerated information and misinformation. The whole book is like a whole one big sci-fi manifesto.
Well, and Preston Nichols claims to have deprogrammed hundreds of teenagers. So yeah, I'm like, you're not really innocent, buddy. Like you're a weird sex guy.
So switching to another aspect or another part of the book. So again, we're going back to 84, the end of the year. Another guy appears to this engineer's lab door. His name was Duncan Cameron, and Duncan is important in this whole story. And why? Well, he showed up with a piece of audio equipment, and he wanted to know if the engineer could help him with this device. So he quickly became absorbed in the group of psychics that the engineer was working with them. He drove him to the Montauk Air Force Base, and not only recognizing the building, uh, Duncan told the engineer that the purpose was for each. He told him what was the purpose of each of the various buildings. So this guy was a psychically gifted person, if I can put it that way. So without even entering the base and knowing, being there before, he was like, oh yeah, this building serves for this purpose, this other building for this purpose. He was able to tell before they even entered in any of these buildings. So he knew even where the bulletin boards were located in these bases, in each of these buildings, in on the whole Navy base. It was like, and many similar small details, like there's no way you can know unless you've been there, or again you have that gift of psychic reading. And there's that terminology, I forgot the exact terminology, but uh, during the Cold War between America and Soviet Union, each of them had telepathic spies. So they were able, each of the countries were training people to telepathically go over the seas, cross the ocean, and go to the enemy in base with their mind and psyche, and just observe the secret documents and experiments, and come back to their own body and just report to their bosses what they saw. I forgot how is this called. Do you remember the name of this ability in the whole project?
Project Looking Glass.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, so they were able to, like, you would be here in America and you'll be mentally able to spy what is happening in Russia. So you can see their technology, their weapons, and they would do the same. I honestly I honestly doubt they ever stopped doing that. Not that I have any evidence for that, but if they were doing this 50 or more years ago and able to do so, why would they stop if that would help them or supposedly help them winning over each other when it comes to technology, power, military? So I think this does happen, especially after talking with some of the guys um, on the podcast. We're actually interviewing some people, Christians and non-Christians, and reading data, scientific data and statistics when it comes to people being able to unlock, quote unquote, I don't want to sound new age-ish, unlock certain abilities of the mind. And they're like, well, what does this mean? Is this even biblical? How can we use this or abuse it? I think I think that my guest name was Matthew Mac something. So we did a couple of episodes on this, on these very interesting spiritual abilities. So yeah, when Duncan, the psychic, and the engineer entered this transmitter building, he suddenly went, Duncan, into a trance and began spitting out information. This was curious, but the engineer had to shake him repeatedly to break him out of this condition. When he brought him back to the lab, he applied techniques that he had learned to help Duncan unblock his memories. Layers of programming were now coming out of Duncan. A lot of information concerning the Montauk Project. A shocking program came straight to the awareness of Duncan's conscious mind. He blurted out that he had been programmed to come to his place, befriend him, and then kill him and blow up the entire lab. So supposedly this story is true. Of course, we can't deny it or confirm it. Duncan is a psycho, I said psycho, as a psyche guy. maybe he was a psycho too. I don't know. He was supposedly programmed and sent by someone to find out the engineer's project and then kill him and burn out or blow up the whole lab, so there will be no evidence found. Duncan appeared to be more outraged at this because he was like, what's happening? I didn't know about this, because supposedly he suppressed this, so he even forgot that he was hypnotized or programmed. But Duncan, now turning out as a good guy in the story, he swore that now he will join the engineer and help him when it comes to this project, and that he doesn't want to, listen to the other side, to put it that way. And yeah, Duncan was revealed later that he actually was involved in the Philadelphia experiment. He said that he and his brother Edward had served aboard the Eldridge as members of the crew. So he was supposedly on that USS Navy ship. A lot of things surfaced later with, when it comes to work with Duncan, and we'll find out more later. But now, skipping 2 years later, in July of 1986, they decided that they should go to the United States Psychotronics Association, USPA, in Chicago, here locally. I never heard about this association, and talk about all of these things. So the engineer went there with his buddies, and when he was talking about this, it created a whole chaos. The information got out to hundreds of people, supposedly, and helped them for safety, because they were concerned that someone may unalive them for this information, for digging when it comes to the Montauk story project. So they wanted to go to Chicago and spread out this information to hundreds of people when it comes to different people, so that they felt that there was safety if multitudes of people find out about this. I mean, then it's very hard to unalive hundreds of people versus one or two. So the engineer felt like, but this is not enough. We want to go to directly to the federal government. The information they had included pictures of the orders given to the different military personnel, which they had found strewn about the base. The senator, which they met and connected through someone's nephew and so on and so on. I have to skip a lot. So the senator did a personal investigation and verified that military technicians had in fact been assigned to the base. The senator also discovered that the base was decommissioned, derelict, and mothballed since 1969. Having served his country as an Air Force general, he was particularly interested to know why Air Force personnel were working on a derelict base, and where did the money come from to open the base and run it. So supposedly there are photos, there are documents about this whole case that we don't have. Of course, the senator then got even more involved in this whole story because it just bugged him that something huge, supposedly huge, was happening like this behind his back, and that he didn't know anything about it. So he wanted to personally find out, not just to help, Duncan, the engineer, and the rest of the crew. So when the senator completed his investigation, he couldn't find any trace of government funding, no appropriations, no oversight committees, and no payments. And this is very weird. And even when the senator, went to investigate this, this whole project at the Montauk Air Force Base, he said, the author of the book says that the senator was not welcomed warmly because they couldn't kick him out, honestly, but he felt he wasn't supposed to be there and asking questions. So let me skip here. Okay, before I switch to the project Moonbeam, that's Moonbeam. That's another interesting project. What are your thoughts so far?
Well, first of all, I kind of had to chuckle because our engineer is driving around Duncan and then takes him back to his place and deprograms him. And if we remember what I said about deprogramming, I hope he bought him dinner first.
No, I'm gonna be graceful and say that didn't happen. Maybe it was just, and hopefully just, a mental deprogramming and nothing physical.
Well, I've heard in interviews Preston say that that's his deprogramming method. So yeah.
Wait, with everyone or just with the opposite gender?
He only does it with dudes. Preston is a homosexual. So.
Oh, okay, I didn't know this. So he didn't come out of closet. He just deprogrammed people in the closet. That sounds bad. I'm sorry.
He reached in the closet and deprogrammed them.
I'm not. Poor people. I hope they all get justice.
Yeah. So, but yeah, that was his method of doing that. Yeah. As far as the senator is involved in everything. Like you said, we don't have any evidence of any of that, right? Like, I mean, there's nothing that they're saying that they can produce anything of. So, I think we'll just move on to the next thing, Project Moonbeam.
Yep. So when it comes to this Project Moonbeam, again, this guy, the co-author of the book, the engineer, he keeps being recognized by people, and he was like, what the heck, this keeps happening to me, and I don't know who these people are, because he supposedly has this severe memory block. So he's like, I can't remember. I can't. So he believed that the things that made it so hard for him to reconcile and remember these things from the past, that he had been given a full set of normal memories, which told him where he had been. So supposedly he was suppressing the truth because of his programming by whoever programmed him in the past, so he could remember some aspect of his life, probably delusional and maybe greatly exaggerated, just like this book is, versus the real reality that he had in the past, which he can't remember. But things are turning around because his memories start getting improved by the help of this Duncan, the psyche guy. And the engineer eventually realized that he must have been existing on two separate time tracks. Now this is where things are getting even more bizarre. And he's like, you know what? As long as my memory was still largely blocked, there were three avenues to approach the problem. It's like, I can try to help myself through regression or hypnosis. Second, I could look for clues and hints, like investigative things like a detective. And the third thing, I could try to go and find the answers through technology. This would include theories of how the other time tracks were created and how he ended up doing all of this. And this was something that throughout the book he was trying to do. He also recalled earlier strange experiences that had occurred while working at this company called BJM. There was a period when all of a sudden a band-aid would appear on his hand. Strange things. He was like, I haven't had this band-aid 15 minutes ago. How in the world just popped from the thin air and now I have it on my hand or on my arm? Like I wasn't injured. Why do I have it? I didn't put it. Just recently my hand was just normal. And then he said, okay, but the other day something strange would happen again. Like I would be just sitting at my desk and all of a suddenly starting to feel ache, like same hand. And then the back of the hand was sore and there was band-aid, another band-aid on it. So he said, but I didn't do anything and I wasn't lifting something heavy. So like this is suspicious. Why would this happening to me? So he was like, I eventually remembered that this is him saying the reason I had sustained so many injuries to my hand. In my alternate reality, I frequently had to move different equipment. So you had no explanation all this time, but you're like, and because you want to come up with explanation, you're like, oh, in my real life, in the other reality, the real reality, oh, I was actually, lifting this heavy equipment by myself and he says I didn't mind working by myself and others not helping me, so from lifting all of these things I got bruises and that's why I put band-aids. I'm like, that's I didn't feel very reassuring explanation, to be honest. And then he starts explaining this building where he worked at BJM in Melville. So he says they had high security area, and he says, yeah, I had no clearance to be in that area, so but I decided to walk in anyway, probably because he was curious and going to explore. And he says, when usually when you bump into one of those security officials or officers, you know they would you would give them your badge and they would guard it and give you back another badge with a different designation, like you're allowed to go further, throughout the building in probably deeper levels and floors of the building, probably more secured areas. And he was like, well, this ID permits you to walk there. And I simply went in and gave the security officer my badge from the lesser security area. And what do you know? He gave me a badge with my name on it. I had a hunch and it worked. I walked around it and let the churning of my gut determine what direction I should go in. And then he says how he ended up being in this mahogany paneled office. There was a large desk with a nameplate that read Preston B. Nichols, assistant project director. So he's like, this beautiful office is mine. I don't just work here, but I'm an assistant project director, and there's my name in this reality. So he was like, oh, this is the first, supposedly, a serious physical evidence that I had something out of ordinary that was happening in this, alternative reality, to put it that way. And then he says that he had an entire second career in this location, in this, alternative reality, but he knew nothing about this because he forgot he was deprogrammed. And then he says, but when he started remembering things, he says, oh, I can't talk about this. Well, very conveniently, because we can't check on what you don't tell us. So he's like, it's a top secret. He speaks about these things. He says, I am not allowed to tell you. So you can tell us about the programming, any aliens, animals being deprogrammed, criminal rate going up, about all this technology, some names, locations, but you cannot tell us what you did over there. Yeah, not very convenient. I mean, convenient for him, but not for us. So he's like, I'm bound not to mention it for 30 years because of an agreement I'm signing when I worked for this company, BJM. However, I didn't sign a single thing regarding the activities of the Montauk Project, so I'm going to spill the beans. That's basically what he's telling us. So he said, you know what? Just recently, a while ago, I decided it was time to go back and check things again and come to my supposed office. So he went back to the ordinary reality, to put it that way. And he was like, let me go back and see again my office in another reality. So he approached the guard, the security officer. He gave him the ID, the badge, but this time he didn't give him anything back. So the officer told him, by the way, Mr. Roberts, which is fictitious name because he didn't want to reveal to us this guy's name. He says, Mr. Roberts wants to talk to you, Mr. Engineer, so and so, Preston. So he's like, Mr. Roberts? I was like, he's confused. Who is this guy that want to talk to him? So a man opened the door from the office that had project director written on it. And that was Mr. Roberts. And he looked at the engineer and said, what do you want to come in here for, sir? And Preston, the engineer, he's like, I just want to go back to my office. And then Mr. Roberts says, you don't have any other desk here, sir. And then the engineer is pointing to the office where his desk had been. And as he entered the room with the project director, he found like his desk is gone. In a couple of days, or a few days since the last time he was there, he says they removed everything that belonged to me and every trace that I ever worked there. And then he came up with the understanding. He said, somebody must have realized that I had visited my office when I wasn't supposed to. Again, this is like a matrix, network of realities and events happening where someone is pulling the strings. I had entered in an ordinary state of mind, which was not to their liking. They apparently had not turned on the program, switching me to an alternative reality for that particular day, and must have been wondering, why did I show up? They must have concluded that the process was leaking and that I was somehow able to remember my alternate existence. As a result, they stopped everything. I was now sure that I had been experiencing two separate existences. He's also speaking about acquiring certain equipment called Delta T. And then he says, as he sat there and held the wires together to put them together, the time functions were causing his mind to shift. The more he was so-called playing with his equipment and with these antennas, the more he became aware. Then one day he says, the whole memory line blew open for me. So he started remembering more and more. And then he explains what is Delta T. It's an antenna that has octahedronal shape or structure, and it can shift time zones. So it is designed to supposedly bend time. And he says, now he's talking about the Phoenix Project. Any comment since the last time till this chapter, especially when he says that he was able to visit another reality, and he visited his office, and in a few days he disappeared. How credible would this be, Shaun? Not very.
I think it's schizo. One day I happened to go down here and there was an office, and then the next day I go there and they're like, "What the heck are you doing here, peon? Get back to your desk." Like, no, you don't run the company, stupid. And then, I'm gonna go get a Delta T antenna because this is what's cool is Delta T. Dude, in algebra, Delta T means change over time. Like, are you kidding me? Like, you couldn't even make up something good.
You know what? I was thinking about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, cartoons and TV shows, and they're like Donatello, my favorite dude from the cartoons. He was like, making those small antennas on the top of their like van, and I'm thinking about this as you're telling me about Delta T. That's how I imagine how the way he describes some things. They're more to sound more authentic, but some of the elements, many elements of the whole story sound very ridiculous or like very sci-fi, very cool to watch a movie or a TV show or read a novel, but extremely hard to verify. And it's like, we have your word. Sometimes he would scan the documents throughout the book and show them. But again, how can you prove any of this? So it's like, it's a crazy, crazy story. That's why I'm like, okay, I'm just going to read it for the sake of the podcast. But it's almost like looking at the tree. So the core is there, or you hope the core is there. But with all these branches, branching out and going left and right, I'm like, and blossoming and stuff. That's how I feel his story was like over time. Like so many details had to be added to make a cool story, and like you have to sell it. So yeah, I don't know if you want to say something more.
Just and then for every time that maybe somebody looked at his story and was like, well, this doesn't make sense, he just inserted the, I can't tell you, I signed a 30-year agreement with a company that I'm not even running, I'm just a peon for, but for some reason I thought I was running the company.
Oh, by the way, those 30 years ended 3 years ago. I wonder if the guy's still alive. I
No,
wonder if he's alive. No?
yeah, no, he died in, I think it was like 2018 or something.
Oh man, he like few
Yep.
years to 5 years to 4 years to release everything.
Yeah, he died, Duncan's dead, and Al Bailic's dead.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, if the whole project was happening in the 80s, we're not even going as far as back as the Philadelphia project. I assume most of the people in the book died. But yeah, switching to the Phoenix project. So another supposed U.S. government project began when it comes to weather control. So we're switching from mind control, um, and all these people, animals, behaving insanely, alternative realities to the weather control project. And this was also happening in the 40s under the code Phoenix. The information and technology for this came from Dr. William Reich, I think so, an Austrian scientist who had studied with Freud and Carl Jung. And Reich is the one who Shaun elaborated in, for like 5-10 minutes when it comes to discovery of the organ energy, which is the orgasmic or life energy. I don't want to go too far. It's very controversial. It's very sexual. It's unnecessary for me to go through all of that, especially because Shaun explained all of this. Um, okay, I wanna stop. I wanna skip when it comes to a lot of these things. So in the late 40s, this Austrian dude, he contacted the government and told them that he had developed technology that could take the violence out of storms. And they're like, At this point, the government's technology team, they merged Reich's discoveries with their own weather monitor and produced what is known today as the radio sound. Um, According to witnesses, approaching thunderstorms uh, actually split and went around the test site and on Long Island once when Williams Drake's technology and the U.S. government technology were merged and put together, and they were testing. When this thunderstorm was approaching, again, these witnesses swear that the thunderstorm split in half and went around the test site on Long Island. So, like, yeah, even in the 40s, we had this technology and it worked. So by the 1950s, so within the next decade, radio sounds were being sent into the air in masses at a rate of about 200 per day. So he's now coming with a theory. He says there were literally hundreds of these radio sounds in the air every day. With the radio range being limited to 100 miles, there should have been a pile of receivers known as radio sounds receptors, and they should have been very common. Basically, you should be walking and find them in a field. But then he says, it is quite strange that I have never seen a radio sound receptor or the equipment that should accompany, uh, you know, one of these things. Um, to skip a little bit. Okay, so it was unusual for him to have a data transmitter, and in this case, transmitter is actually the radio sound, but no receiver to pick it up. So he said, this must mean that the government didn't use these receivers at all. Like, but then what is their purpose? Why would they be invented? So then he continues his theory. By the time these radio sounds hit the ground, they were dead. This way, the public were encouraged to return them once when they found them, right? They wouldn't be able to pick up live units. And then he says, well, but if there's no secrecy involved here, why would the government design a battery to burn out a costly tube that would have to be replaced after a very short usage? So he says, well, I continue investigating radio sound, because again he was so much into radio technology and how this, the whole technology and how it works. And he says, I discovered that the temperature and humidity registers in the radio sound simply don't work in any of them. It just simply they don't work. So for him, he's trying to connect the dots and saying, well, what was then the purpose of all of these things? So he's saying this is very intriguing. So he says, in theory, this means that the government could have targeted communities, buildings, or an entire populace and transmitted organ, or as it is called, DOR energy. These type of activities have been reported in Russia for years. No evidence that this would necessarily happen in Russia, but this is one of those trust me bro sources. So yeah, that was that project. The following project is the Phoenix Project, and how it slowly has absorbed the Project Rainbow. So he says, okay, Project Rainbow resurfaced in the late 1940s. So we always go back between that time frame, 1940s, 1980s. So this is the crucial time era in the whole book when it comes to so many different projects. So he says Project Rainbow, which was just a code name for the operation that brought the Philadelphia experiment. He says he was going to continue research into the phenomena encountered on this USS Eldridge naval ship. This project was concerned with the electromagnetic bottle technology, which eventually resulted in today's stealth fighter craft. 10 years later, it was decided that the remnants of this Project Rainbow and the radio sound project should be included under the same umbrella with a human factor study. So after all of these projects and merging technologies and projects into one name, they came up with the title of Phoenix Project. And like, this is how we're gonna call and title all of these things just under one name because it was easier. So Phoenix Project. The project headquarters were at Brookhaven Labs on Long Island, and the first order of businesses were to put Dr. von Neumann, whom we heard about a while ago, in charge of the entire project. Von Neumann and his team spent about 10 years working out why human beings had troubles with electromagnetic fields that shifted them through different places and times. They actually found out that humans are born with what is known as a time reference point. So at your conception, your Shaun's, my conception, all of ours, there's a supposed energy that is being attached to a timeline. So we all start from that point and then we move forward, right? So to understand this, it is necessary to view the energy being or our soul as distinct from the physical body or the person concerned. So far, easy to understand. So this rainbow technology turns on and creates what can be called an alternate or artificial reality. It creates a stealth effect by not only isolating the ship, but individual beings as well within this bottle effect. Those beings were literally removed from space in our universe as we know it. And again, no evidence for that any aliens were removed from space. This accounts for the invisibility of the ship and the people on board. This accounts for the invisibility of the ship and the people on board in 1940s with the Philadelphia experiment. The alternate reality thus created has no time references at all because it is not part of the normal time stream. It is entirely out of time. To be in an artificial reality would be like waking up and not knowing where the hell you are. The Phoenix Project was faced with solving the problem of bringing human beings into this bottle and eventually out from that bottle again, while at the same time connecting them to the real-time reference that will be known as Earth. This meant that when they were in the alternate reality or bottle, they had to be supplied with something that would give them a time reference. So this was a challenge for the scientists and engineers. They solved this by fitting into the bottle all the natural backgrounds of the Earth, at least enough to convince them, people that would be under the experiment, of a continuous stream time reference. To do otherwise would likely cause them to be in the bottle and experience trans-dimensional disorder and problems of this sort. This is why it was necessary to set up a phony stage that could then feel some degree of normality. the people inside the bottle will be going through zero time and essentially a no reality experience, and they'll be disoriented. The computer had to generate an electromagnetic background or phony stage that the physical being would synchronize with as well. If that wasn't done, the spirit and the physical body would go out of sync, thus resulting in insanity. The time reference would lock in the spirit, and the electromagnetic background would lock in the body. The whole project started in 1948 and was finally developed in 1967, so 19 years later. A final report was written and submitted to Congress. If this is true, I'm so glad that the Congress, I'm not so glad that the Congress had funded this project. So again, I cannot confirm if this really happened. We don't know. But if this is true, I'm very unhappy with the Congress that they approved the funding of this whole project. So they were told that the consciousness of a man could definitely be affected by electromagnetics. And additionally, that it would be possible to develop equipment that could literally change the way a person thinks. So after this, the Congress said no. They were concerned now that if the wrong people got a hold of this technology, that they themselves could lose their minds and be controlled. So we see the change. We see that they, actually, for me, it is encouraging to see that people in charge, again, if this is true, can have change of thoughts, change of hearts, change of minds, to be moral. Despite of your political background, religious background, they can decide what will be good for masses and bring a good decision, if this is true. Because then it shouldn't be about money, it shouldn't be about technology, it shouldn't be about power and control. Let's do something that won't hurt people. And if this was true and they had change of heart, change of mind, man, that makes me happy, because we then can have a little bit more faith in authorities. So this is when it comes to this project, and we're switching to Montauk. But I want to take a break and let you speak your mind.
Man, that was a lot. Okay, let's talk about the whole electromagnetic bottle thing. Um, so in the movie Event Horizon, they did the Philadelphia project, but instead of using Tesla coils, they used a black hole. And the reason they used a black hole is that the only electromagnetic field that is strong enough to distort space and time is a black hole. So a Tesla coil isn't going to be able to do that. It doesn't put out near as much energy. So that's why they used a black hole, because that's what you would need in order for that to even happen. So that's where we're at with this whole thing. Like the whole electromagnetic bottle is stupid. Like honestly, just stupid. Um, like it, yes, technically, according to Einstein's theory of relativity and unified field theory, any electromagnetic field distorts time space a little bit, but the amount is so small that it's not measurable. You need something like a black hole to be able to do something like that. So, yeah, that's stupid. Um, as far as the Congress approving the project and then pulling it back, uh, my understanding was, from what he was saying, is Congress approved it because they saw use in it. But when they found out that it could read your mind, which it can't, that's stupid. But when it found out it could read your mind, they're like, oh no, they could use it against congressmen. Yeah. And so that's why they said no. According to this thing, it never happened. Nothing like that ever happened. It wasn't a real thing. Can electromagnetic fields affect your brain? Yes. There is a technology now. There's a guy by the name of Todd Murphy who's running the project, and it's the God Helmet Project. And I think it's either at Harvard or Duke, but one of these Ivy League schools in their research lab, you can go on and put on this helmet, and it sends electromagnetic waves into your brain, and it's able to stimulate hallucinations. It's able to stimulate something like approximating supernatural um, things that you would see, like ghosts, shadow people, all kinds of stuff. And what they're trying to prove from that is that electromagnetic fields can interfere with the way that we sense the world. And so, yes, that is possible. It is a thing. And it's actually just us recently understanding that thing. But as far as the rest of that, and going back and forth in time, and uh, that's all stupid. Like, it's all really stupid. And then, like, oh, well, you got to have the coordinates and put them into the computer. I'm sorry. You got to have the spatial coordinates because apparently because they sent people to Mars apparently. So you got to have the spatial coordinates and the temporal coordinates. Do you know how long that would be? Like you got to go from like the beginning of the universe until I don't know when's it going to end. So you got to have coordinates that fit into there. Apparently, I mean, unless it just goes minute by minute, but if it's second by second or even nanosecond by nanosecond. Who's to say how long your coordinates would have to be? Uh, and then you're gonna do this on like a 128-bit system that like it wouldn't even be able to process a picture that we have today. You
You know
kidding
what's
me?
funny? When it said like, oh, it's able to create virtual backgrounds, I was just thinking about the StreamYard and podcast. I'm like, yeah, we can do it now in the 21st century easily with this technology. But sometimes I even have guests whose internet doesn't work and I cannot even see them, so they have to turn off the video camera so their internet will go faster. I can at least hear them. And I'm like, I have people who also have problem when they use the virtual background, their internet slows down. And you tell me in the 40s they had a computer that was able to generate this virtual reality so the people would receive it and not go nuts when they would switch from reality to reality. I'm like, I mean, yeah, no, 100 years later, yes, not in the 40s. Like, yeah, they were not dumb, but it wasn't that much developed unless he thinks like, because later he thinks about Tesla's technology, aliens giving them technology. I'm like, dude, this is just too much. And some IBM from like dinosaur ages. It's like, no, I'm sorry, but this is like too incredible.
Yeah, yeah. This is decades before Pong on Atari. Right? And they're like, oh yeah, we've got a representation of this person's brain. No.
Or the snake.
Yeah, or snake, yeah. Yeah, just stupid.
So now we're finally coming to when the Project Montauk is beginning. When Congress disbanded the Phoenix Project because they were like so good and concerned about us and the mind reading, the group at Brookhaven had already built an entire kingdom under this project. They had this scientists, Riken and Stow Technologies, and they could definitely affect supposedly the mind of man. So the Brookhaven group went to the military and informed them about this. Hey, we have this amazing, fantastic piece of technology. You have to join us in our project. You don't even have to invest money. All we need is like if you would provide us the location where we can continue with this very important project, you know? So of course, military is military in every country. They're like, yeah, we're interested. We're enthusiastic to join you, especially if we don't have to invest money. Yeah, we can just give you some facilities that you can use. So then the Brookhaven approached them and say, okay, you have a deal, but here's a list that of technologies that you possess as the military personnel and that we need. And supposedly on this technology list was the old Sage radar. For this, they required a huge radio sound that would operate around 425 to 450 megahertz, which is something we mentioned at the beginning of the podcast. So from this earlier research, it was known that this was the only the one of the window frequencies that was getting into the human consciousness, supposedly, right? The name of this project was known as Phoenix 2 by the officials who were concerned and involved in the project. So the Montauk base was being reopened now, years later. But in 1944, an American troop train went through a French tunnel carrying $10 billion worth of Nazi gold. I don't know if this is true. The train was dynamited in the tunnel while carrying 51 GIS. General George Patton was in Europe at the time and investigated this whole incident, but he couldn't understand how an American troop train could be dynamited in Western Allied territory. As a general and human being, he cared about the GIS. $10 billion were also a mystery because, hey, back then, $10 million were worth as now, and this was in 1992, more than 30 years ago, supposedly $200 billion. So we can say now that maybe $400 billion in today's currency. That's how much, that's how much this train was carrying when it comes to the material and technology. That was the worth back then. This money was supposed to be used to finance the project initially and for many years to come. After it was all spent, the project was allegedly financed by the infamous Krupp company family who controlled the ITT Corporation. And they explained that the Krupp with 2P family were the owners of the German munitions factories in World War I and II after being found guilty of war crimes and complicity with Hitler. And the Nuremberg trials, the head of the Krupp family was paroled from a light prison sentence and allowed to continue his notorious armed dealings. The staff was a mixture of military employees, government employees, and personnel supplied in various corporations in this new Montauk project, where the company, this wealthy company, and military personnel were involved. And then this engineer says, "Oh, I was one of the latter personnel that came to the project. It was 1973. Inside the building, they had a chair inside the shielded room. First, they would sit someone in the chair. It was usually the psychic, Duncan. Like I said, his name was very important throughout the whole project. Then they would open and close the door to determine how much microwave energy was getting into the room. All of this was being done while the antenna was rotating and focusing to a point in front of the building. At the same time, that transmitter was blasting gigawatts of power. Duncan sustained serious brain and tissue damage as a result of continuous exposure to 100 kilowatts of RF power at a distance of about 100 yards. The radio waves baked his brains and chest. So the dude was a baked potato. It wasn't until 72 or 73 when it was finally realized that stealth technology dealt with non-burning radiation. One theory was that the actual non-burning radiation, which is the higher order components, actually went through the reflector and would be opposite to the focal point of the antenna. They tried it and turned the antenna around 180 degrees. They aimed the burning rays into the sky and hit the person with the non-burning rays. Then they found that they had the same mood-altering capabilities, if not more than they had before, but this did not damage the people. It just altered their mood, their thinking, their behavior, their feeling. But what was the cost of this experiment? The outer base had a nice gymnasium and a bowling alley with excellent food and accommodations. So unknown to all these people working there, they became guinea pigs to the mood control experiments. However, they were not the only guinea pigs, and this is horrible. Experimentation was also done to the townspeople of Long Island, New Jersey, upstate New York, and Connecticut civilians just to see how far it could go. However, most experimentation was done on the vacationing soldiers at this base. During this period, they also experimented with frequency hopping. Frequency hopping consists of the transmitter instantaneously and randomly shifting around to any of the 5 different frequencies that were being fed to the transmitter. Programs were derived that could change the moods of people, increase the crime rate, or make people agitated. Even animals within the vicinity were programmed to do strange things. And we go back to the very beginning when he even started investigating this whole project, and when people will tell him, yeah, animals will show in great packs in the town. There'll be insane crime level, then for 2 hours nothing, then again more crime activities, then for 2 hours nothing. It was like in perfect frequencies, like someone is manipulating and ordering people or even animals to do this. The researchers were able to derive programs whereby they could focus on a car and stop all the electronic functions in it. At first, the program could only get the lights in the car to dim. It was eventually refined to where the program caused all electronic functions in a vehicle to cease. Um, Before we switch to Montauk chair, I have to stop. This is a especially interesting chapter. What do you think about this mind and mood altering abilities? Can something like this exist?
Theoretically, maybe. Back then, no. um, but yeah, theoretically, maybe. I mean, we know that electromagnetic fields have certain impact on the brain, but it's not something that you're going to be able to disseminate for hundreds of miles. I mean, it would have to be very directed. Like I said, the God helmet directs, you know, lots of energy directly at somebody's brain in order to be able to stimulate it to have these different thoughts, feelings, hallucinations, that kind of thing. It's not something that you're going to be able to send to broadcast. Now, something that can be broadcasted is like infrasound, and we have those weapons, the infrasonic weapons today, that they use to disperse crowds and stuff, and it does have a negative impact on your mood. But you're talking about things that are um, very, very low as far as the hertz. Instead of being like, you know, 450 megahertz, it might be like 4500 hertz. So orders of magnitude lower, back into the audible range. Well, it would be just sub audible, but yeah, I think that it's theoretically like the possible, but the idea that you're gonna just like send it over hundreds of miles, no, no. And the idea that you're gonna interact with the idea that you're gonna be able to stop a targeted vehicle. So you're broadcasting these radio waves, you know, over this large area, and you're gonna target a vehicle and then cause its electronics to fail. How would that even work? Like, how are you going to pinpoint something if you're broadcasting and you're rotating? How are you going to pinpoint something in a specific location and then direct all of the energy, or all of the waves to that specific area, to that specific target, to stop the electronics from working? That doesn't even make sense to me. Like, I mean, the dude's an electrical engineer. So, well, at least he claims to be an electrical engineer. Supposedly, he had a degree from Tampa that never existed, and he got his master's degree from Montauk University in parapsychology, which they don't offer a parapsychology program, never had. So he's got two degrees that don't exist. But I
Oh,
don't even
wait,
know.
wait, wait, wait! Don't you have PhD in podcasting? You told me
Uh,
before.
No, no. I have a THM in podcasting.
Where did you acquire your degree? In Chicago? Here locally?
No, I got mine from Serbia.
Okay, now I know it's fake because it was probably cheap to buy it, but hey,
Uh,
if it
It, it,
helped
it's
you,
it's honorary. It's an honorary degree.
so switching to this Montauk chair, that I don't know why, but my mind goes immediately to X-Men, to Professor Xavier and stuff like that. So in the 50s, ITT developed sensor technology that could literally display what a person was thinking. So it was essentially a mind reading machine. It operated on the principle of picking up the electromagnetic functions of human beings and translating those in an understandable form. It was made of a chair in which a person would sit. Dr. Xavier, right? Coils which served as sensors were placed around the chair. There were also three receivers, six channels, and a Cray 1 computer, which would display what was on a person's mind digitally or on a screen. Mind you, in 1950s, I think people are still trying to learn to use calculators, but whatever. It is still a mystery how this technology was developed. Yeah, that's my point. It is a mystery. But look what how this guy find a solution, Shaun. It has been suggested by who? No, but it has been suggested that the research was aided by the Syrians, an alien race that came from the star system known as Sirius. I'm like, dude, so this is the explanation? Even so, even if this would be partially plausible explanation, Shaun, doesn't this remind us of what was happening in First Enoch? Like, oh, we have these spiritual beings that came from the distance and just want to give us forbidden knowledge, want to help us, quote unquote. Yeah, they want to help us by giving us this and not telling us about their identity, but supposedly they wish us well. I mean, to me, this is like copy paste of First Enoch and the fallen ones. But these are called Syrians from the planetary system as Sirius. And of course, you couldn't if this was literally happening to you and you're a human being witnessing this spiritual entity or entities trying to contact you and help you, there's no way you can confirm their data if they're lying or not. But again, this is copy pasted from First Enoch.
And from what I understand, the Montauk chair was just a brown recliner. Like for real, people who have like investigated this, and they're like, yeah, they've produced a picture of Duncan in the Montauk chair. It's a brown like lazy boy recliner. Like there's nothing special about the chair itself.
Oh, but you don't know it was enhanced, especially under the fabrics, man. Come on, you don't know that.
I mean, maybe the Syrians from Sirius, you know, and sprinkled in some star technology all over it, or you know, the Pleiadians that supposedly helped Adolf Hitler because they were killing off the Draconians, who are the Jewish people, according to this whole story. Like, yeah, it's just this stuff gets into like really ridiculous stuff.
So we are here basically on this little planet that is witnessing this eternal galactic war, and we're just mere spectators because our technology is so under developed compared to all these alien races. So they're just fighting each other, and supposedly, I don't know why they picked us, so we can be witnesses and we can pick whose side we want to take. That's how it sounds like.
Yeah, I mean that's how it sounds like, but unfortunately, you know, for the story itself, anytime a sufficiently advanced group of people has come across people with inferior technology, they're always conquered. And their culture is destroyed. Like that's what happens in conquest. That's what we would expect to happen here. Unfortunately, you know, for the story, we're not all enslaved by Syrians, so it doesn't make sense. Why would they? Yeah, it just doesn't fit the narrative.
Yeah, because the story is like, oh, we have these friendly aliens from a distant galaxy with this name, and they just approach us and want to share their technology with us, and they want to help us construct this chair that has special abilities. And why? Because they love us so much and they want to help us. I mean, didn't we hear about something like that, before?
Mm.
And we didn't learn the lesson. I don't know. So when this chair was about to be constructed, there were these solid signals that would change with a person's thoughts, and they were actually coming out from the receivers. This device was actually reading the human aura, which is a word that psychics and metaphysicians use to describe the electromagnetic field that surrounds the human body. In the same way that human speech is carried via radio waves, this device was carrying thoughts, which theoretically manifest in the aura. The six output channels from the receivers were then run through a digital converter, turning them into computer language and fed into a computer. Again, in 1950s. The computer could print out a dialogue. Yeah, a bunch of ones and zeros. When the people at Montauk heard about this mind reading device, they thought it was great. The theory was that a person in the chair could transmit an alternate reality to the crew, like in the Philadelphia experiment. Man, what person would be so powerful to be able to do that alone, even with enhanced technology like that? It's like almost like having, not almost, this is like having God's abilities. This is insane, especially in the 50s. No way.
Well,
So when
but
the yeah,
part of the reason is because Duncan Cameron is Space Jesus. So I mean, according to the story, Duncan Cameron is Space Jesus. So that's how he's able to do it.
yeah, and with this alien technology that was beyond our time and beyond all of our achievements, yeah, I guess they would think of this devises Almighty, again, taking one of the God's attributes just for a piece of equipment that you said it was a recliner. So the theory was that a person in the chair would, like I said, transmit this alternate reality to the crew. When the ship became visible, the crew would then be in sync with the alternate reality and wouldn't become any more disoriented or mentally lost. So the chair was supposed to help them with a proper person, a psychic sitting there and projecting reality. At this point, a chair was procured, so it was made, which we now prefer to call it as the Montauk chair. The Cray 1 computer was then interfaced with the IBM 360 computer, a mighty computer that was projecting virtual reality. I mean, come on. It was about the time that, at this point of story, that one of the co-authors, this engineer, he remembers a dude called Al Bielek, who was taking on a key role in the story. Al was one of the authors of the Philadelphia Experiment and some other UFO conspiracies. He had memories of being involved in the Rainbow projects as well. Originally, he was brought to the project to explain what was going on metaphysically with the use of the transmitter on human mind. He was chosen because not that he only had an engineering background, but he was also psychically sensitive and had extensive knowledge of esoteric matters, all supposedly. So now this guy Al, it was his job to help interface the Cray 1 computer with the IBM 360. And then this guy, the author of the book, he joined the project, the engineer, at this time to help them work with the radio frequencies and transmitter. A psychic would then sit in the chair in Southampton and relay via computer to the Montauk transmitter. The psychic would think thoughts, and the Cray 1 would decode them. They would be put on a 32-bit radio link and sent to Montauk, where they would be plugged into IBM 360. The IBM computer would then broadcast it out, would broadcast it out the transmitter and could build a thought form out of Montauk of what the psychic was thinking in Southampton. So basically, the distance wasn't the problem. They're able to connect all these devices together and by the help of the psychic to see this reality that he was thinking about, he was projecting. So this was basically a mind amplifier. It took another year of research before they could even get a readable signal sent to Montauk out of the transmitter. So that was the relationship between two locations, Southampton and Montauk. And besides this main psychic, Duncan, there are a couple of additional psychics on site. They literally tune up the computer programs. Imagine computer programs in 50s. I mean, they didn't have DOS. I even forgot what were the abbreviations for DOS. OS is operating system. I forgot what was DOS. I'm sorry. I had computer in the 90s. They didn't have those things back then. Finally, the thought forms became clear over time. The psychic could concentrate on something in Southampton, and the transmitter at Montauk would transmit a very clear representation of what he was thinking. How is it possible? I don't know, because they didn't have technology back then in the 50s to show you videos of what was projected. So unless you think something that would look like this, I don't know what was clear. It's not explained. So another year another year passed. So in about 1975, they discovered another problem. If there was a glitch in the flow of time in their reality, everything fell apart. In other words, if the psychic in the chair projected a reality that was not consistent with their reality, it would cause the connection between Southampton and Montauk to break up. Any glitch in space-time between the two cities would cause the transmission of the thought form to cease. So, okay, I made a mistake because they're not in the 50s anymore, they're in the 75, but that's still very early to have technology like that. That's way before Windows even came. So even the most simple Windows, where everything was so ugly, and when people didn't even have computer mouse at the very beginning when they would buy a computer. So to understand better this time glitch, the author of the book is trying to help us understand this problem. He says, imagine time as a continuous pulsation or flow. As the basic pulsation of time interacts and changes form with other flows or phenomena, we have motion as we know it against the backdrop of time. When these core pulsations that make up time are shifted, then the direction, the speed, or flow of time are changed. This is known as a time glitch. Theoretically, these occur every now and then, and since we are referenced in our reality, we really don't notice a time glitch. Deja vu phenomena could well be an example of a glitch in the fabric of time. With the chair in Southampton, the mind control experiments with the transmitter were not always working, and that's because of these time glitches. Okay, let me skip a little bit. Yeah, so when it came to 1975 and the original prototype by these aliens called Syrians, the device was not identical to the one that ITT had created. It had a different kind of coil setup wherein the coils were connected to crystal type receivers. So the book author, this engineer, he was like, there's a problem. This is why we have this time glitches, because the coils that aliens gave us in the blueprint and the coils installed in this, that Shaun calls recliner in this chair, they're not the same. So could this be the problem while people are having time glitches and deja vu effects? Because the chair that was supposed to be there had this coil setup where the coils were connected to crystal type receivers. These were actual crystals and not ordinary electronic devices. Now Nikola Tesla, whom we talked about last Friday, comes to the picture, and this basically provides more information that I find not very true. After the review of this prototype, secret bids for a new chair were put out, and the RCA came up with a winning bid. Nikola Tesla had designed receivers for RCA in the 30s. If you Google, you will see that Nikola Tesla did not really work for RCA. So who is true, who is correct? You decide. Tesla's work during the period was done under the name N Turbo, but not with TU, with TERBO, which referred to his mother's maiden name. This is another inaccurate information because, again, if you Google, it was Tesla's grandnephew, William H. Turbo, who had that last name from Trbojevic. But because, again, it's difficult for Americans to say Trbojevic, they're like, we'll just give you a shorter version of your last name, so you'll be Turbo. Okay? Just like people not always say my name, so they call me Nick or Nico, whatever. So we hear an abbreviation of the whole last name, but it has nothing to do with his mom. His mom had completely different last name. So even though someone would say, well, it's a small thing, it's not that small because you see error after error in the whole this conspiracy story and in the whole book. So supposedly Tesla was using this fake last name when he was doing these projects, and he was signing them with that fake last name. And then the author of the book says that these Tesla receivers had special coil structures. They were normal type radio coils, but were arranged in strange coupling patterns and set up and designed by Tesla. The coil structures in the Tesla receivers are also known as delta T or delta time coil structures. And to get the Montauk chair operating without interference, they had to replicate what the crystal receivers did with the Syrian alien technology. The coil structures in the prototype receivers were delta time coil structures, and the receiver itself did the delta time function, but not the antenna. So that's why it was problematic. Now the antenna, the transmitter, and the chair were in the same time plane. When they supposedly tell us Tesla's help, they redid, they got these crystals, they got these Tesla coils, everything start working. So the computers were in their own time plane, right? Because we were talking here previously about two time planes, one real and an alternative one. When everything was digitized, a person was no longer in real time. A fake time has been created, and now they're giving some very basic designs or the blueprints when it comes to the chair. Shaun, your thoughts on this chair that you call a recliner, and Syrian technology, and Nikola Tesla's fake last name, and how he was supposedly working for RCA, which I couldn't find online to be true.
To be biblical, I would say that it sounds like a bunch of scubalon. Um, like it's just so dumb. Um, if you imagine, you remember the old Game Boy system? We're talking orders of magnitude more processing power in that than in the computer systems they're talking about. Like this is just stupid. Like, oh, and it's gonna render like, oh, the image. How? How? I mean, we had graphics cards in 2005 that couldn't do that. Like, what are you even talking about? Like that, just just all of it is just stupid. And then they're making up a bunch of crap, and then aliens. Like, oh, we got the technology from aliens to do all this, and somehow we just plugged it into our stuff and it worked. Like aliens. Like this is man, this is crazy. Yeah, that I I don't believe none of that.
Okay, let's cover a few more chapters because I'm losing my voice and we'll be done. So, time warping. So, the experiments continued. 1979 came. Duncan, this dude, the psychic, was still very important to the whole project. Um, he would concentrate on something, for example, at 8 p.m. in the object would happen at midnight or even 6 a.m. Whatever he thought of would not happen at the time he thought of it. So there's still some glitches and problems. Um, okay, I have to skip tons of text. So the key clue to our understanding time was a suggestion that we use a particular type of antenna structure which the author of the book refers to as the Orion Delta T antenna. This is interesting. Why? Because it is referred to as Orion because there was a persistent rumor that the design was given to the project by aliens from the Orion constellation. And then he says, "Oh, but these are completely different aliens initially that were trying to help us with the chair. These were from this star system called Sirians, but these are from Orion constellation. So they're different. So you have all of these, dude. It's like I'm just going Men in Black movies. Imagine there's like a somewhere in universe there is this huge blackboard where contractors are being assigned, alien contractors, and the location is Earth. And like, hey, who want to help humans with all this, secret knowledge and technology? Oh, you from this system, from this planet, you want to go and give them this knowledge. You want to help them with this. Cool. You want to go do this. I feel like there's somewhere in space all this not random, but it would sound like, and of course I'm being sarcastic. I don't think any of this is true. Any of like there's like this space platform where people, I mean not people, aliens can just sign in and say, hey, I'm a contractor from this planet or from this star system. I want to go and talk to humans and offer them this knowledge or this technology. I want to make the context. So it's like they're throwing all these aliens because hey, if we cannot solve the problem suddenly is being solved, so let's offer any supernatural or paranormal solution in the book. And then when he says there were rumors by who? Where's the any piece of evidence for that? I'll stop here because it's so funny. That's why I'm being sarcastic. Like as if the universe, all these planets, care actually about if people on Earth can create a stupid chair.
Yeah, can you imagine being alive today where we have like 5G and fiber optic, and believing like this book and thinking that, aliens came to planet Earth, were able to travel through star systems, and they gave us an analog antenna? Like, can you believe that? Like, who would buy that? That's just retarded. Like, I'm sorry, that is dumb. And then like you said, it's like we have alien handyman services out at the Cosmic Home Depot that are bidding jobs for us. Like, are you what what? So what in their free time when they're not like Ubering around people in their alien abductions, they're doing handyman work. That's what.
I was about to say a joke, but people will call me racist, so I was like, I won't say nothing. I won't say anything. But yeah, so now with the help of these Orion technicians, Duncan, the psychic guy, he was sitting on this reclining chair that Shaun calls it with that terminology, and then the transmitter would be turned on. So then his mind would be focusing and trying to be blank and clear, which is funny because that's what they tell you when you're doing meditation, where you're in the state of before you're getting hypnotized. Why is your mind being blank and clear? Interesting. So he would then be directed to concentrate on an opening in time from, let's say, 1980 to 1990. At this point, a hole or time portal would appear right in the center of this delta T antenna. So you could walk through the portal from 1980 to 1990 like it's nothing. There was opening, and you could just look into it like, ooh, I'm peeking from one side to another. I'm just seeing the whole decade back and forth just through this, portal. It looked like a circular corridor with a light at the other end. So there is a light in the end of the tunnel, Shaun. I think it's true when they say that. So the time door would remain as long as open as Duncan would concentrate. So as long as Dr. Xavier from his powerful chair has this mental ability, there will be the tunnel open so you can just walk back and from. Maybe that's how aliens came, because this sounds so, oh my gosh. Shaun, this is how the Stargate Atlantis works. Do you think that the Stargate universe, the whole those movies and TV shows, they took inspiration from stories like this? What do you think?
I hope not. Like I really hope not. I hope they weren't like, oh yeah, here's how we're gonna do it. We're gonna hook this like crazy guy up to a chair and plug him into an analog antenna, and a door is gonna open. Like that's so dumb. I really hope that's. I'm hoping it has more to do like with the doorways in Peru and stuff like that, where oh yeah, maybe that was like an alien Stargate and we just don't have the technology anymore. But like this is dumb.
And it's funny. So a little bit later, they're starting with a new project. So it's not Project Phoenix 1 or 2, now it's called Project Phoenix 3. So those who traveled through the vortex described it as a peculiar spiral tunnel that was lit all the way down. As one started to walk down, he would suddenly be pulled through it. It propelled one out the other end, usually in another place as opposed to Montauk, or according to where the transmitter was set or placed. It could be anywhere in the universe. It could be anywhere in the universe. Okay, so if this is true, if we had this technology in the 70s and early 80s, and you could have projected this portal anywhere in the universe, were they making contacts with these aliens from Orion and with Syrians that were giving us technology? Were they like this space handshakes? We made a business. Is that how we have all these Men in Black movies? I mean, seriously, like, how is this operating? If we had this decades ago, where's the technology now? Or they still have it and they do it underground, right? And they still make, these close encounters of the fourth kind, but they're not hurt, supposedly, right? My dude, this is like, he's putting such a heavy, story with so many heavy conclusions and details without so much with the lack of evidence. And yeah, I mean, that's at the very beginning of the story. There's soft evidence, there's hard evidence, and they're saying, well, sometimes soft evidence is enough, even though you can't necessarily prove it 100%. I'm like, well, but have you proven anything? Or I mean, out of 100 things, maybe you did prove 5 or 10, but like everything in between is just like, let's invent a sci-fi story, which is a nice story, but again, I don't know. When I see Stranger Things, I see it more biblically true and spiritually true than when I see all these projects, even though they're the ones that inspired Stranger Things. Any comment on that? Or
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's like what I think Stranger Things did was like what the movie Event Horizon did was they took the story and they're like, okay, what if we took all the stupid stuff away, and then we tried to figure out how this could actually work, and then we bring that back, and so I think that's what Stranger Things did, and that's why it's a better, more cohesive story, because they're actually interested in not did this happen, but if it were to happen, how could it happen? And so they're dealing more with that, whereas this story is just not good.
Oh, but here, this continuation of the story, according to Duncan, the psychic, there was also another function of the time tunnel. About 2/3 of the way down the tunnel, one's energy leaves the body. You could feel a big thump accompanied by a tendency to see on a broad scale. To see on a broad scale. He reported sensing a higher intelligence along with the out of body experience. This reminds me of people who would be taking that weed ayahuasca. Is that how it's pronounced? And they would see all these entities, and their soul would leave their body. They'll be doing astral projection. They will see all these entities, demonic entities. They'll be like angry at them and like, why are you even here? You don't belong. This is a spiritual dimension. This is similar to that. This is the occult. This is dangerous, Shaun. This is a prime example how technology can be abused. But then who gave you that that technology? Well, supposedly the aliens. But who are the aliens? Aliens are nothing more than demons disguised.
Yeah. I think that you're drawing a correct analogy there between what they're saying that they saw, which, like, let's be honest, how much of this is LSD, and which has the same chemical, the DMT, or produces the same chemical in the brain as ayahuasca does, and so that's the reason that I think it was Switzerland that made it, and the United States decided to purchase not only all of the uh, LSD, but also to purchase the rights to it back in the 70s. So I mean, I think that maybe that's what's going on here. Maybe that's why this is so fragmented and not cohesive. Is these people were tripping really bad in the bunkers, uh, and they're just doing like LSD trips. I don't know, but that could be why they're seeing what the people who take ayahuasca are also seeing.
Okay, this is also crazy. It was a routine to create a tunnel, grab somebody off the street, and send them down. Most of the time, these people were derelicts whose absence wouldn't create any chaos in society. If they returned, they would make a full report on what they had encountered. Most of these people used for the experiments were sobering up for a week before entering a portal, but many didn't make it back. We don't know how many people are still floating around in time, whenever, wherever, and however. So basically, he's saying that for this experiment, all these officials were taking homeless people, punks on the street, like that wouldn't have family, no one would miss them, and they would be experimenting with them if they can go through these time portals and appear and reappear, come back. If not, they're still floating somewhere. Dude, do you know how that sounds like? They just mentioned it in a paragraph and continued writing. I'm like, well, you can mention something like this and just stop. Like, okay, give me something more if you have something more. Don't just say, oh, the reason why people are missing, including children from the street, is because they're locked in a time portal somewhere in the universe. They're floating around. What does that mean?
Yeah, it sounds like they're trying to just take all of the conspiracy theories and wrap them up in a bow and say, yeah, we're also responsible for all of the missing 411 because we just send them through time tunnels and drop them off and see if they come back, right? that's that's crazy.
So I thought we hit the craziest part, but this is even worse. Whew. It says a later investigation showed that Montauk had a neo-Nazi connection and that the Nazis were still on the Aryan kick. What information is available, and listen please to this, is that they sent every raw recruit into the future to 6037 year AD. So 4012 years from now in the future, they send them always to the same point through these time portals, to what appeared to be a dead city in ruins. So now we went from crazy to psychotic to completely insane. You need to go see a priest and a psychiatrist. This is what they're talking about now. So they went more than 4,000 years ahead in the future, supposedly using these portals and this technology. And people who will be deported to this place, they will be always landing in this same location to what appear to be a dead city in ruins. So talking about the Planet of the Apes or whatever, those futuristic movies where society in the future is gone. So this was interesting, and will be done soon. Now we're heading to Mars. So it was in late 1981 or even 82 where the first actual use of this technology was employed to gain entrance into the underground areas in the big pyramid on the planet Mars. Dude is writing this and he fully believes in this. He says there is currently a videotape in circulation entitled Mars Mission. This is a presentation to NASA scientists by scientific journalist Richard Hogland concerning this complex that is associated with the face on Mars. In this video, Hogland shows that the face and nearby pyramids were photographed by the Viking spacecraft in the 70s. Well, thank God we have new technology, and I'm going to share that with the audience very soon. Computerized projection techniques are used that give one a 360-degree flyby on the face of these pyramids. The video also gives a close look to these structures. Hogland is trying to convince NASA to make more pictures of the region, which is known as Cydonia. And I didn't plan mentioning this and even covering this section of the story, but because it's included in the book and in the whole story is important. Eventually, Shaun and I plan to make a whole episode on these pyramids on Mars, but because it's mentioned this, I guess we can just cover it now quickly instead of spending hour and 30 minutes in a separate episode. So supposedly, this guy, the journalist, was trying to persuade NASA, hey, let's take photos and videos again of these supposed pyramids on the face of Mars. So the directors of the Montauk Project, they knew there was a colony. Listen, they didn't suspect, they didn't believe. They knew there was a colony on Mars. It is more than likely that they were there and they're a part of the conspiracy. What conspiracy? Are they against those who are at Orion and those Syrians? Or is this the third type of aliens? Are like all waging wars or trying to help us? What is actually the conspiracy? Because dude mentioned 200 conspiracies, different conspiracies in the book already. So he said, listen to this. Mars was interesting to the Montauk researchers because they had realized that there was an old technology there. They knew somebody had built the pyramids and face on Mars. These were not natural formations. The people who were living on the surface of Mars could not get to the underground area beneath the pyramid. The entrances were either sealed over or simply couldn't be found. In fact, it appeared that the big pyramid was sealed better than the pyramid at Giza. And he knows all of this, what's happening on Mars. Despite all the expensive and fancy technologies that was available to the Martians, the pyramid could not be penetrated. The scientists at Montauk, they decided the best approach would be to project right into the center of the Martian underground. The newly discovered Montauk technology gave them this benefit and this help to use the spatial warp to get inside. So Shaun, if I'm getting this right, because us as Earthlings were so behind with technology, so we needed help from Syrians and then from aliens from Orion to help us to develop this technology, and then we're using this technology to help the third race of aliens there than Mars, because those Martian aliens, they're even worse than people on Earth, than humans when it comes to technology. Do you see the logic here? Because I'm not. I just see here as this cosmic conspiracies, like who is getting who is helping who is spying on who. This is seriously like a cosmic spy conspiracy novel.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty crazy. The only thing that I can think of is maybe they put Bugs Bunny in the chair, and that's why Marvin the Martian came to Earth. Um, this is all it's all crazy. The idea that oh, there's these pyramids on Mars and there's a face on Mars and all of this stuff, and then that there's a colony currently living on Mars when we know that the surface of Mars is frozen over. We know the temperature on the planet of Mars can't sustain life, but oh yeah, there's a colony over there. That's that. This is just ridiculous.
Yeah, while you're talking, or if you're done, that's fine. So he was writing in the at the time where we only had this. So human face, this is just a regular website. I didn't even mention it as the source for this podcast. But human face, first seen in 1976. Yeah, the first photo or the first photos we had with primitive technology, and this was in the 76s. Yet they want to tell us that in the 50s and 40s they could have created these virtual backgrounds and ships would be missing and manifesting hundreds of miles later. In the book, they're trying to tell us this with the while later in 1976, this is the best image they could have given us from Mars. So supposedly, according to this story, this journalist goes back to NASA, says, "Hey, go back to Mars, get us better quality pictures." And NASA's like, "Yeah, we don't want to listen to you. We'll do what we want to do." So I can understand if people would see something like this and they're like, "Oh yeah, look at these holes. This looks like eyes, and this here a little bit can be nose, and these like this like mouth." I'm like, "Oh man, are you telling me someone, because this just couldn't pop up in existence, so someone built them? Oh, so there must be a Martian civilization." And some of the structures, when you enlarge them, they look a little bit like pyramids. So they created conspiracy upon conspiracy upon conspiracy based on photos like this. But I want to show that later, even though not immediately after 1976 when the original photos came out, later NASA did take way better photos. So this was in April 1998, 6 years after this book was published. We got much better photos here with better technology. So it says it took until April of 1998 and confirmation with additional data from the Mars Orbiter camera on NASA's Mars Global Surveyor before popular speculation waned. More data from the same orbiter in 2001 further confirmed this conclusion. And this is this Cydonia region, because they were calling this Sidonian faces, Sidonian pyramids, whatever they would. By the way, I like the name Cydonia. I don't know what is the origin and the background of that word, if it comes from any mythology. But as you can tell, it looks way different with new technology. And this reminds me because I also like astronomy and astrophysics. When I'm looking at the photos that James Webb, the currently most modern and best telescope we have, when we see photos and images made with James Webb, and you would compare it to Hubble is way, way worse than James Webb. We will see so many more details in our universe when it comes to constellations, when it comes to stars, when it comes to planets, when it comes to comets, because of James Webb's technology. And they say they're making an even more modern telescope that will give us better images and more clear images than James Webb. But this takes time. It needs money. It needs better technology to be invented, and all of this to be put together to find the perfect location, usually on a high location like a mountain, to come up with images like this. So I'm waiting in the future what we will see, how more even clear images we'll be getting in the future. There are no faces here in this Cydonia region. And this is the same image being black and white. Okay, this is also another image. It says face on Mars, Cydonia region, given from a bird's eye perspective. It doesn't really look that much special or fancy or like human face anymore. Yeah, it has unusual shapes, but it doesn't look like human anymore. Skull-shaped, quote unquote, structure appears in some images. Okay. Nothing weird, at least not to me. Nothing sensational. Okay. We got much better images No pyramids, unless they think that these triangles would be something like pyramids. No signs of any civilization, no buildings, nothing, nothing, just rocks, just dirt. We don't see this. Of course, you can always have people who say, well, NASA in this case, they're lying to us. They altered images. They deleted this. They're just hiding the truth from us. You can always have that as an excuse. You can always, come up with those theories. Shaun, what is your opinion? Are these photos helpful to us when it comes to discerning the truth?
Yeah, I mean, it shows that the human psychological frame or filter, I think it's called pareidolia, that wants to see faces and everything. That's at work when we're seeing a photo that isn't really clear. It's normal for us to try to interpret the features as a face. And so I think that's just what's going on. It's a well-known psychological phenomenon.
Yeah, and I just want to be done for tonight so we can finish with this Mars story. So in order to find the underground area, they kept moving the open end of the vortex until a corridor appeared. So now Duncan was able to solidify the portal, make it more stable. The away team was then able to walk from Montauk to Mars and be underground. Ooh, where are the images? Come on, we're talking about late 70s and early 80s. Cameras were fully available by this time, and even decent cameras, right? No photos, no proofs, nothing. So using the time portals, Mars had been scoured for live inhabitants. Researchers had to push back about 125,000 years before they could find any. So they used this technology, human technology, and portals to go back 125,000 years back in Martian history to find any proof for life, which we don't know, but supposedly they found it on the face of Mars. And then the author of the book, this engineer, says, oh, but my personal view is that the pyramid on Mars serves as an antenna. Perhaps there is technology inside of the pyramid. According to Duncan's recollections, he traveled to the inside of the pyramid. He saw technology being operated there and called it the solar system defense. According to his account, the Montauk researchers wanted this thing shot off. This defense has been shot off retroactive to 1943, which is the commonly considered amongst many UFO buffs to be the beginning of the massive UFO phenomena. The movie Total Recall, at least the original one, which Schwarzenegger, is fancifully based upon some of the events that occurred with the Montauk Project. The way they used the chair in that movie is strikingly similar. Then they're talking about these beasts that, it's not very well explained. Supposedly in 1983, they saw an entity they described as the beast that damaged, the base. When it comes to this location, they weren't provided a photo, which is hilarious because it's very black and white and very odd and very. There's nothing to see. It's like a black shadow, black and white photo, and you just see a silhouette of something. And for them, oh, this is the proof there was a beast that was able to, destroy some of the properties when it comes to this Montauk base. And basically, there are only a few more chapters left until the end of the book. But to summarize the book, this will be the gist of the book. So many conspiracies, so many theories, so many data that is given but hard to back up, and everything culminates with this Mars theory that I found hilarious. Honestly, it sounds amazing as a sci-fi novel. It honestly does. It's something that I would love to read. But you're telling me humans went there and they were able to go 125,000 years in the Martian history. They found life. But like this would be a groundbreaking discovery. Where is any evidence? Like, why don't you take at least something like this? Hey, this is from Mars, and our scientists can actually test and see. Oh yeah, this metal or this type of stone or whatever is not found on Earth. This is from some alien planet, alien technology, whatever. We have nothing. Just like, oh yeah, there's a rumor they went there. Oh, okay. I mean, no, it's a great story, but it's a story with so many holes that I'm thankful that Stranger Things exist because of them. But when it comes to any authenticity, dude, it's like very hard to believe that even 10% of this book is true.
Oh, ye of little faith. You need to come to my vacation home on planet Neptune. We could hang out there. Uh, this is yeah, it's all ridiculous. It's stupid. Stranger Things did a much better job of telling this story, and that's what it is. It's a story that there's elements of the story that could be real. Like not saying they are real, but like they feel like they could be real because we know that the government has been involved in so many other conspiracies, not theories, conspiracies where we know that they've released the files, they've told us the things, they've done the stuff. We know that there are other countries who have done very similar things. I mean, we didn't even get into the child abuse and the all of those kinds of allegations that are so common in Project Monarch, Project Artichoke, MK Ultra, MK Search, um, that were part of Unit 731, Dr. Joseph Mengele, the Patesti experiment. I mean, these are all things that like we know absolutely happened. We're involved in those kinds of things. So that element is not unreal. So when they're talking about that kind of stuff, like I'm like, okay, I could imagine that there was some sort of Montauk military base that was involved in Project MK Ultra, MK Search. I know that they had just what we know from their their financial records because they destroyed all of the MK Ultra documents. The only reason that we know about it is because they had a tab in the financial records that they didn't destroy, and we ended up getting a hold of those in Freedom of Information Act. They had to release heavily redacted files. We know that there was 150 different sites that they were doing MK Ultra, and they had over 1,000 different test subjects, and they had millions of dollars into the project. So I could believe that there was a place in Montauk underneath the radar tower where they were doing these kinds of experiments. We know Project Looking Glass and Project Mockingbird that they were involved in some sort of psychotelemetric research. So that's not far fetched. But all of the other stuff where they built onto this story, they just made themselves look stupid. If they would have just stuck to like, yeah, there was child abuse and there was fracturing, Manchurian candidates were created, there were, spies were created, and we were programming people with different triggers in order to take out, presidents and senators and stuff, and we were involved in some sort of psychical research, like that would have been fine. But when you're like, oh yeah, we created an antenna, and like the Syrians gave us this technology, the Orions gave us this technology, we had to go help out our brothers on Mars because they're not as advanced as we were. uh, like bruh, you took something that could have been a decent story and you just made it unbelievable.
Now the term third world country has to be expanded to third world planet or something like that, because hey, we take care of our poor neighbors so well that we have extra sources, so why not, and resources, so why not helping, like you said, our brothers on Mars. It's hysterical. I also want to say that this Sunday, 5:30 p.m. Central Time, I have the honor to interview Joseph Jordan, who wrote this book 5 years ago, and I just started reading it this week because I have so many books I bought, but I don't have time to read. So we'll be talking about the alien deception, the UFO deception, a guy who eventually became a Christian and was exposing them and exposing these alien um, supposed abductions, and compares them to demonic possession. And guess what he found? And I'll stop here because I don't want to spill all the beans. Thank you, Lisa. Um, I don't want to spoil the beans, but he found out, and his team, that never never these alien abductions happened to a Christian guy, because whenever a Christian would be attacked, and if they would mention Lord's name or command it in Jesus' name, or recite from Lord's Prayer, or church hymn, something like that, these spiritual attacks would stop. Even sometimes it would start with sleep paralysis. You can't move your body. You're levitating. You see this weird demonic alien beings against you who wanna put probes in you, who wanna experiment, and all these people who went through this abuse, physical, mental, spiritual, all of these people that went through that, and they were like interviewing so many people, none of them was a Christian. So very interesting story with a very skilled and an experienced man who's been doing and writing and investigating this, working for MUFON for decades. So I'm looking forward to talk to him and interview him. He told me, he was so generous when asking how much time you have. I wanna respect your time for the podcast. He said, as long as you have questions, we'll keep podcasting. I'm like, yes. When do you hear something like that? So guys, you have 40 hours to send questions when it comes to UFO and alien deception. You can send it either, if you know me personally, through Facebook messages, maybe my phone number, which of course I'm not, any of those details I'm not telling on the podcast live, or you can just comment in this podcast episode, or I provided a Hotmail email, which is my secondary email, because I'm not sharing my primary email on the YouTube and podcast either. But you can shoot those questions, you can shoot those suggestions if you have anything, or in the live chat. Again, this Sunday, 5:30 p.m., Joseph Jordan, the author of this book, great book, and I will be talking about alien/UFO deception. So I'm looking forward. Shaun, thank you so much for your time. Is there anything that you else we wanted to say before I cut you off and I start talking about this, before we end with this podcast?
I just commenting on the next episode. I know that there will be some people who are fans of Michael Heiser, who maybe watch Fringe Pop 321, where he said that not every alien abduction where they call upon the name of Jesus does the abduction stop, and we can understand that and harmonize that with what our friend is saying here, by understanding that the seven sons of Sceva, when they went to drive out demons, and they said, in the name of Jesus, who Paul preaches, and they said, Jesus we know, Paul we know, who are you? So just because you call in the name of Jesus, if you're not a Christian, that's not going to help you. We have biblical evidence that that is the case. So before calling on the name of Jesus to stop an alien abduction, which is really a demonic attack, you need to first be in Jesus.
Amen. That was a good pastoral ending to the episode. So yeah, Shaun and I will be talking. Oh, what is Kirk's first name? No, not
Kirk. That is his first name, Kirk Cameron.
Kirk Cameron. So Shaun and I, the following Friday, will be talking about Kirk Cameron's recent statement that hell may not be what we think it is. It may not be eternal conscious torment. It could end up with us all being destroyed. There's so many Christians crucifying him, attacking him, condemning him. Is he even a Christian? Is he condemned? Is he even nuts? So we want to talk about, these different theories when it comes to the soul's ending of the unrepentant sinner. And we want to see that actually you don't have to agree with someone, but you don't have to call him a damnable heretic when it comes to that. So yeah, that episode is coming Friday with Shaun and me. And for next Sunday, I don't have a guest yet. So yeah, see you this Sunday, 5:30 p.m. Central Time. Thank you, Shaun. God bless all of you. Thank you, Lisa.